All right, welcome everybody to our initial podcast. Here we are.
Here we are. We made it. Woohoo! Victory.
Welcome. So our podcast is Fairly Legal with Jones Wilson Injury Lawyers.
Cory Jones here.
All right, I'm Justin Wilson. So this is our inaugural podcast. We're doing this in part because we want to be able to create a show where we can provide information, we can provide answers to questions. Sometimes it may be questions you didn't even know you had.
Yeah. And we'll give you answers that maybe we didn't even know we had. So we'll see where this goes. We kind of have to do this disclaimer. I think everyone has to do this disclaimer. We are still in the midst of what we've called the COVID era. Justin and I are not masked. You'll notice that. And we are in less than 6 feet of proximity. However, we have pretty much quarantined together, I would say. We were essential because when the courts closed, or when the quarantine hit and they really kind of had a stay-at-home order, there was an exception for law offices because they didn't know what the courts were going to do. They closed the courts,
right.
And so at first we didn't really know. So we spent a lot of dead time basically in our offices doing not a lot of anything.
When it highlights, honestly, it kind of highlights as we get started, as we introduce ourselves. So if you don't know who we are, the introduction kind of coincides with why we really don't need to social distance, because most everybody, if you ever go to, they say, well, if you live in the same household, you don't need to. Cory and I practically live in the same household.
Yeah.
Cory and I have known each other, so you know who we are. I have been practicing law in the state of Nevada for 20 years in October. I was licensed in October of the year 2000.
I was licensed October of 1993, 27 years. Yeah. So we've been together a long time. Because I've been with you the whole time. Your whole
correct.
Law practice, I've been part of that.
So, well, like I said, I was licensed in October of 2000, but I actually came out here. So I moved here from Oregon, the great state of Oregon, by the way. I always like to add that. It is the great state of Oregon. I moved here from Oregon in 1999, actually originally before I actually graduated from law school. And I clerked at a law firm in which Cory was at. Yeah. And he and I have essentially been together ever since. Yeah. We've been business partners since 2005. So for the last 15 years, Cory and I have been actual business partners.
Yeah. I was a brand new partner in that firm when you joined in 2000. Yeah. Right. So it was good. I mean, and it was a questionable hire at the time. I was against it.
It still is. Okay. It's still a questionable partnership. I'm going to be honest with you.
And the partner meeting, I still remember saying, I vote no, but I guess overruled. But it worked out in the end for me. So I guess that's good. Yeah. We go everywhere together. I mean, we work out, we play golf, we are at the office, our offices are right next door to each other. And so we're constantly together.
Which is important because we call the show Fairly Legal because there's going to be more than just legal issues that come up.
Fairly legal. I mean,
right. That's where the idea comes from.
In it.
We're going to talk probably about golf. If you're an avid golfer, you may want to tune in. If you have golf tips, that's great. Cory and I are avid golfers.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one thing I can say about COVID, it has shaped our golf game.
Yeah. COVID has been, because I mean, when the courts closed, we do a lot of litigation, and we were doing a lot of depositions, a lot of court appearances, and then COVID hits, everything got continued, everything got delayed. We're wearing shorts right now. It has been 6 months since I've worn long pants to the office. I think I wore them once for an arbitration or something on Zoom, even though they couldn't see what was going on downstairs. I still feel weird, not wearing pants. I'm not gonna wear a white shirt and a tie and a suit coat and not wear the pants. I don't know. I can't do that.
But the point of the show is things are still going on. Insurance issues are still insurance issues. People are still driving. And so we're going to talk about that. Before we do, as we talk about a little bit about ourselves and introduce ourselves, I have to introduce Cory to some degree because he is what you will find is somewhat of a unicorn in that he's born and raised. I moved here 20 years ago, never left, have no intention of leaving. I love it here. But Cory is a true local, born and raised Las Vegas.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Cory has that Bonanza Bengal pride.
Yeah. Bonanza Bengals, class of 1983. 1983, there were like 250,000 people in the Valley. There was, it was a small town. It's still, in some ways, it's still a small town. I just ran into somebody today and started, there's like, I can ask one or two questions until I can make a connection. So where'd you grow up? What part of town? What high school did you go to? Boom, there it is. I'm like, oh, so-and-so.
Oh, it's crazy. And if you are a local, or if you know a local, if you know somebody who's like born and raised here, like sure it's happened to you, because it happens to me all the time. We go out to grab something to eat. If he meets somebody who was born and raised here, he knows their cousin, he knows their brother or sister. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it drives me crazy.
It's kind of like the Kevin Bacon game. You're like 3 degrees.
There's 6 degrees of separation from Cory Jones.
Yeah. And it's not even 6. It's like 2. If you grew up here, it's like 2. Yeah. It's not even the same place that it was years ago, but I like it. I mean, we're becoming a legitimate city. We've got, the Knights, Golden Knights, and we've got a little bit more diverse of employment base. Back in the day, it was just all hotels. Everybody worked in the hotels. There's a few little, businesses, Pepcon, whoops, which I was here for when that happened.
Cory actually grew up where the New York is right now. What we call the Old Dunes golf course.
Yeah. If you were ever driving through town on I-15, there's that big genie who was on the side of the road. He's like, I don't even know, 50 feet tall or something, standing there with his arms crossed like this. And yeah, that golf course, there's no homes on it, but my dad was a golf course superintendent. So we lived like right in the middle of the golf course. Well, not right in the middle. We lived almost to Tropicana. So my brother and I, it was a super fun place to live, because we'd watch like basketball games, and the commercial would come on the basketball games during a timeout. We would grab an iron, a putter. We would run outside, play the par 3 right in front of our house, and we would be back inside before the commercial was over. It was crazy. It was fun. It was a fun place to live, fun place to grow up.
But it's where the New York is now. Your house is, as I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like it was in the area of where the hotel or the casino is.
No, behind, like it faced Tropicana, and where the roller coaster is, my house would have been right underneath the roller coaster. And you can see off to the east a little bit from the roller coaster, there's like a one of those half circle Quonset hut things. That was like the shop where they kept all the golf course equipment and whatever. And my dad's office was in there, and our house was just off to the side from that, maybe 100 yards from that. So
that's crazy to me. Every time I think of that, when just the idea of growing up in an area near the Strip that isn't the Strip. I mean, we all see the Strip now, and it just literally almost runs the length of the center of Las Vegas all the way to the mountain now. I mean, It just goes so long by the time you get down to the South Coast. I'd love to have those stories. I mean, in just the 20 years, it's funny because I moved up near Black Mountain in Henderson. And when I first moved there, it was a single-story house, and we had this view of the Strip. It was amazing. The problem was it was a single-story house, and then all these homes got built around us. And I had this amazing view of the Strip for about 6 months, 7 months, and then all these homes got built around us, and it was gone. And now that whole area is just jammed.
Yeah.
Homes. So the growth in Las Vegas is amazing. And that kind of, I guess, leads us into what we're doing this podcast for and what we're going to talk about today. And that is COVID, right? It's when you have economic downturns, there's a lot of people in town who, and you maybe find yourself to be one of them, you got to make financial choices.
Right. And we've all seen it, what's happened to our beloved tourism industry. So many casino employees, from the lowest, even a lot of management employees have been furloughed, and some have been officially laid off now. The fact that, they closed, I mean, I couldn't comprehend growing up that the casinos, that the Strip would close, that the lights would go out. I mean, sometimes somebody really Vegas-y would pass away and they would dim the lights on the Strip. And that was like, a great honor for somebody who was like a Vegas entertainer. But to have the casino shut their lights down and lock the front doors, that's, in 54 years living here, that's a new thing. I'd never heard of it.
But with that comes, like Cory said, we've had employees, people who've been furloughed from work, and they've been furloughed from work not for a week, but for months. And in a lot of folks, there's no end in sight that they can see. And so what happens is all of a sudden we have to make some very hard and very difficult financial decisions. And so Cory and I wanted to talk a little bit about today, is one of the things that we really want you to give a focus on when you are making those decisions. One thing we don't want you to do. It's a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they have to make these financial decisions as it relates to their insurance coverage. Before we get into that, just make sure that you hit like at the bottom. Subscribe to our YouTube channel would be great. Subscribe to us. We hope you like. If you dislike and you want to troll us, you can.
We'd prefer you didn't, but if you have to, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. What you do with your money is your decision. That's above our pay grade. But we want you to think long and hard before you cut some of the car insurance coverage that you have. And liability. Everybody knows liability coverage is required. You have to have your little insurance card. If you don't, you get just a huge fine. But many people carry. During good times, they're like, oh yeah, I should probably carry that coverage. One of those is uninsured/underinsured motorist coverage. And sometimes you'll see it as UM/UIM. That's the coverage that you carry in case the driver who hits you either doesn't have any insurance or they just don't have enough. Like they paid you their entire policy limits and you're still have medical bills beyond that and your pain and suffering is well above that. It's really to protect yourself. And there are thousands of drivers on the Nevada roads in Clark County that are uninsured. And that's an unfortunate reality, but there are a lot of, people who are not responsible, who are out there driving without insurance.
And you may wonder, kind of get a sense of, sometimes these things can be a little hard to understand. And I say it this way, Cory and I meet people all the time. And you may find yourself to wonder, if we were to sit you down and ask you, what kind of insurance do you have? What insurance coverage do you have? Most people have no idea.
Yeah. We always get the,
we have to go through the process of actually looking it up for them to find out exactly what kind of coverage they have. And so one of the things that you need to do, we'd encourage you absolutely, one of the things to do when you get done today is check and see what exact coverage you actually have. Because when you want to find out that you don't have something is not after you've actually needed it.
Yeah. In a regular auto case, I don't remember ever a time when a lawyer has sued someone for going above their policy limits.
And there's a big reason for it.
Yeah. Because why? I mean, most of us live paycheck to paycheck. Most of us don't have, huge assets. Most of us don't have a ton of stuff. So, what's the point of suing somebody? Besides which, if you get a really big judgment, I'll just declare bankruptcy.
Right.
I'll just discharge it in bankruptcy and goodbye.
I literally just got that. I had a client who was owed money by someone, and there wasn't a lawsuit. I mean, they were owed money by somebody, and all of a sudden they come to me and they said, hey, I got this document in the paper, and it was the person that owed the money caused an accident. They got sued over their policy, and what they do, they filed bankruptcy. Well, they got rid of that lawsuit in the bankruptcy, but they also got rid of my client who they owed money to. Yeah. So the bankruptcy eliminated all kinds of things for them. But the one kicker is, and this is what happens, is that the statutory minimum for a policy is $25,000. That's what the minimum amount is. And that's what most people are going to be driving around with. That means that if they cause a car accident, they hurt you, their insurance company, State Farm, Farmers, whatever, they're not going to pay more than $25,000. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
And so once that happens, they're going to wash their hands. They're going to be done and say, hey, we're done. We paid our 25. Well, what happens if they hit you and they cause a $100,000 problem?
Yeah.
They're going to go, we're paying our 25 and we're done. Underinsured motorist coverage is designed to step in to help make up that difference. So it's designed specifically to protect you.
Yeah.
And that's why we say, don't get rid of that if you're worried about how I got to pay premiums, or because the premium for that coverage is small in comparison to the benefit that it provides to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in 5 car accidents. My first one was in 1987. May have been my fault, a little up in the air. Sorry, Dad. I wrecked my dad's truck. It was loved this. He loved this old Ford truck he had, 4-wheel drive, his big F-250 and stick shift. And I love driving it. But ever since that accident in 1987, every other accident I've been in has not been my fault. And fortunately, and I wasn't seriously injured in any of those accidents, so it didn't come into play. But it's much more likely. My point is that it's much more likely that you're going to get in an accident caused by somebody else, and that your UM or UIM insurance may come into play.
Yeah.
Cost. So you go to the ER, or you go to the you go to get an ambulance, go to the ER, and have some X-rays done. You're already looking at $12,000-$13,000 potentially.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and you haven't even started treating for any of the other injuries that you have. So then all of a sudden, they say, well, here's the 25, and you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's not enough. But that's all he has. You know, if you don't have underinsured motorist coverage, you're done.
Yeah,
You're on your own.
I had a client who was hit by a car. He was a kid. He's 17 years old, riding a bike. He got hit by a car. He got stitches in his chin. It kind of split his chin open, got some stitches. $18,000 bill from St. Rose. $18,000. And the reason was because he got hit by a car. What are they going to do? They did a CAT scan. They did an MRI. Everything came back negative. All he really wound up getting was 18 stitches in his chin. $18,000 in medical bills. That's how fast things can happen. Now, that doesn't mean that if you get hurt, you shouldn't go to an emergency room. We're going to have podcasts going forward that explain all kinds of things that you can do and should do to protect yourself. And so if you get hurt, you absolutely should go to the emergency room. What we're highlighting is that the insurance for the guy that hit you may not be able to cover everything as far as your injuries. And that's what underinsured motorist does to kick in to help you out. We see it a lot, particularly in people who they have their kids. You know, I don't know how many of you got what we like to call classic cars. I love seeing them. If you're driving one, I love you. I love seeing Jeeps and these 1999 Ford Rangers that are worth about $1,800, but they got like the classic vehicle license plate. And everybody always tells me the same thing if they get into a car accident. Well, I just get the minimums because it's a classic car. It's an old car. And I'm thinking, that's great that you have a very small policy to cover the property damage of this car. But if somebody hits you, they could hurt you really bad.
Yeah. And we, you know, when somebody gets in a car accident, they're always wondering about the property damage. They ask me, so how should I get my car fixed? Where should I take it? And I said, well, remind me, what kind of car do you have? And they'll be like, oh, it's a 19. And I'm like, stop you right there. Your car's not going to get fixed. Under the law, if the damage to your car exceeds 65% of the value of the car, it's a total loss. And if it's a 19, I don't care what it is, a 19, whatever, it's going to get totaled out anyway. So your car's what, like $2,000, $3,000.
When we see it a lot, the big kickers, we see it a lot with kids. I mean, somebody goes out and gets an old car for their kid. They go out and they spend $1,000. They go out and spend some money for their kid and they get a bare minimum. Then somebody drills their kid's car and can really hurt their kid, but there's no underinsured motorist coverage on it because they got such a minimum policy. And so we highlight, it's one thing to get a policy to cover the vehicle. You got to make sure that you have insurance to cover the body that's inside that vehicle.
Yeah. Way more important. Yeah. And, we're worried going into this because we saw this back in 2007, when the economic downturn hit. And, if you remember, if you were here then, like 80% of the homes in Vegas were upside down. In terms of the equity and, just everything was rough for those few years. And we just had so many people come through who had, just months before had canceled their UIM insurance because they're like, it's tight, we just made a cut there. And I get it, you have to everyone has to make tough choices for their own families and it's ultimately your decision, but we just want you to think long and hard about it before you just go, oh, well, I don't need that. You may, it's more likely you're going to need that than you're going to need your liability coverage. I mean, you need liability because it's the law. So obviously obey the law, or
even if you're not cutting it, when you're just deciding to get your insurance, when you pick an insurance, a lot of people, Cory and I have talked about this before when we talk about, because clients have come in and they'll tell us, we'll get a letter that says it's what we call a rejection letter.
I just got one today. One today.
It means the client, when they were shopping their insurance, they literally rejected. There's a check you got to do, and you check and you say, I reject this coverage. And it's brutal because you're sitting there thinking you needed this right at this moment and you rejected it when you didn't think you ever would. Be careful about doing that. Underinsured motorist coverage, uninsured motorist coverage, it kind of goes together, and get it. Don't reject it when you're shopping your insurance. Get it. You don't have to get crazy amounts, but just get it. It's designed to protect you. It's the one policy that's designed to protect you in a car accident as opposed to just protecting the other person. You have to protect the other person. When you get your liability policy, you got to get it to register your car. But at the same time, like Cory said, you're more likely to get hit by somebody else than to cause it. You got to have that policy to protect you.
And one wrinkle, you cannot purchase more underinsured motorist coverage than your liability limits. So if you have the minimum liability limits, if you have 25,000, you cannot purchase more than 25,000 of UIM. So if you want more coverage, you have to increase your liability coverage. But it's not double, so it can be affordable if you want to up the coverage, but you want to make sure you're protected, not just you, but your family. And you never know what's going to happen. People driving your car even,
Right. And one of the main reasons why we say you want to be protected is because if you ever need it, use it. I mean, we have people all the time that come to us and go, oh, wait a second. If I get this policy and then I use it, it's going to impact my rates.
Yeah. No one's ever done that. They just said, but Justin, will my insurance rates go up if I use my UIM coverage?
No, I get that every single time. I get clients who are so afraid of using their insurance to do anything because they're afraid of their rates. Yeah. One of the points of this show is to eliminate myths. And that's an absolute myth. That does not happen. Can insurance carriers raise your rates for every year because of just time? Sure. But they can't raise your rates because you're using a policy provision that has nothing to do with fault. You didn't cause the car accident. You just need to use it. Cory has he uses this example for his clients all the time, and I love it. Which one?
Right. I mean, you would never go to the doctor and to pay for your doctor bill at the end of the visit, at the ER or wherever, the quick care, wherever you go. And they say, oh, can I see your insurance card? And you would never say, oh, no, I don't want to put this on my health insurance. They might raise my rates. I just want to pay cash for this. Of course, you're going to use your health insurance. UIM is exactly the same. You paid for this coverage. This is literally the only time you can use that coverage. There's one time when you can use that, when you get in an accident and the other driver doesn't have enough coverage, or he's uninsured, or she is uninsured. When that happens, that's the only time you can use that UIM coverage. You've been paying for it for years. This is the time to use it. Otherwise, why do you have it? If you're not going to use it, by all means, cancel it. But this is the time you should use it.
And Cory and I would highlight, you don't just have to take our word for it. At the bottom of the show, in the description, we're going to have links, and there's a link to the statute. There's actually literally a statute in the state of Nevada that prevents insurance carriers from raising your rates in this. It literally says that's prohibited. They can't do it. Well, you can attach links so you can go there and read that for yourself. We'll include that in the show links. But yeah, they can't do that to you. So don't fret or stress about using insurance that you've paid a premium for like that.
Yeah, this is it. This is your shot to use it. Yeah, but there's a lot of people who really resist. They feel like this isn't my fault. Why should I? And I get it. They want to push everything onto the other driver. And the nature of uninsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist coverage is such that you can't access it until I've exhausted every other option, but from the third party. So if they have other policies or if they have other things, all the other insurance has to be exhausted before we can trigger your policies. So trust me, we're going to go after, I'm going to go after the other driver, but if they're out of insurance, let's use that extra coverage that you have, because one, it covers all your medical bills, and two, it may be your only source for pain and suffering for this accident that you've happened. Because the first coverage amount, the 25,000, that may just cover your medical, may not even fully cover your medical bills. And so you've received nothing for your pain and suffering, for your lost income. None of those injuries are going to be covered. So that's why you carry that UIM coverage, so that you can at least get, compensated when that happens.
Right. And I would tell you, this really is something that you need to educate yourself on, because I have literally had insurance agents Agents who I don't think are trying to burn their client, but they don't understand how some of these things work. I've had insurance agents kind of steer clients away from using their own
Yeah.
insurance
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're afraid of the claim. Like, oh, I'm afraid of you making the claim. And I'm like, that's not a thing. You don't do that. And I don't think they're trying to be mean. It's they literally don't understand all of this
Yeah.
stuff.
They're being well-meaning, but yeah, there's misconception about that, and it's just wrong. So definitely
That's one
keep
of the
it.
that's the main point of the show that we're going to try to bring to you is take away some of these myths, give you some things that you can use, things to look at your insurance. If you take nothing away from this podcast or this show, make sure that you go and you check your insurance and just see what kind of coverage you have and see what you don't have. And so you can either get it, or if you've already got it and you're having to make decisions, we can't stress enough the importance of saying, you know what, think about that one. That one's a really biggie for you and your family. Think about it before you cut that.
Yeah, and price it out. I mean, talk to your agent or get online and say what's the difference in premium going to be? Because I think you'd be surprised how little you save by dropping those coverages, and it could come back to haunt you by not having them. It really can. That's happened hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times during my legal career, that people have regretted not having that coverage, and they've in some cases they've canceled it the week before. It can salvage you in cases where someone just is underinsured, and if you're in even a moderately bad accident with a hospital visit, if you have a hospital visit and you need treatment afterwards, if you don't have underinsured motorist coverage, you will end up upside down on the case. Yeah. Chances are you'll end up upside down, and that's unfortunate.
Underinsured motorist coverage and medical payments coverage can make you sleep at night, can help you sleep at night knowing that, hey, there's going to be enough money to cover stuff. When you don't have it, you really, you're hoping and praying that they caused very little injury to you. One of the reasons why we do this is to give people some counsel and advice to hope that they never need us, because it's going to go as we kind of go beyond just kind of talking about underinsured motorist coverage, and we do shows in the future. We're going to bring you advice about things that are just other aspects of your life, family law, different areas, things that are going on. You may be dealing with furloughs right now and all the things that are going on with evictions. And there's all kinds of things that we can kind of give you as far as information to at least help make you the most informative you can be. And that's what we're going to try to bring you. And because Cory's right, most people don't come to us unless something really, really bad has happened. And we're trying to see partly through this show if we can help avoid that.
Yeah, it's still, so this is a little preventative medicine. You know, we're trying to prevent a bad situation in the future and maybe stave off.
Or if a bad situation happens, we're trying to make a bad situation not worse.
Yeah, that's really what it is. True. That's true.
Check your insurance. If you're one of those people watching this going, I have no idea what policy I have, we're talking to you. Make sure you check it, see it. It's really easy. Go check. It's what we call a declarations page. Go check the declarations page on your policy. You'll see real fast. And if you have any questions, if you have questions, not just about this, but about anything going, put it in the comment section. It may be a great show for us to do, give you people some ideas as to how things work, how the legal system works. People come to us all the time with problems that if they had taken advice a year earlier, or if they had taken some of counsel 2 years earlier, it would have eliminated a lot of their problems.
Yeah. So we hope that was fairly legal. And again, subscribe, like us, love
Please
us.
Like us.
And we hope to see you again.
Yeah. All right. Look forward to it. Make sure subscribe. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, everybody.